introduce a speaker tonight, but I want to go back a little over 31 years ago. Barbara and I lost our oldest son in a car automobile accident. And I got very mad at God at that time, and it took me a while to get past that. But God did get me through it, and it's, I know some of you here have lost children, and you know the pain. That pain never goes away. But it does, lessen over time. And God has used other people in my life to help lessen that pain. And one of those persons is the speaker tonight. 5 years ago, this young man was sleeping on our front porch with the old minister. For some reason, I bonded with him right away. Just like my oldest son, I had to chase him a few times to find out where he was and get him back to the ministry. They were a lot alike in that respect. But I can't tell you how much David has done for this ministry. We probably wouldn't be open today, and I'm not kidding, if it wasn't for this young man and the work he's done around here.
Amen.
He's become like a son to me, and he is a son. And I'm very proud to call him my friend and my son. So tonight, please give a good welcome to David.
I'm just going to give you a small bit of my testimony. First off, the way I came up. I came up in a household where there wasn't that much love. My father has kids up and down the United States. Last time we counted, we figured 30-something kids.
Wow.
Truck driver, also being in the military. And the household I came up in a household where my stepfather was an alcoholic. He was real violent. We used to witness my mom at my young age being raped in front of us and beaten in front of us by my stepfather. So that was the type of home I came up in. So wasn't that much love. So I used to basically kept to myself, didn't have too many friends. The ones I did have, we did things that were bad, but it was not to the extent that kids are today. The things I did is when my mom didn't have money, I would do things to get food and stuff for the household. And eventually, by hanging out with the wrong crowd, we end up actually robbing some Colombians, and they didn't know who took the money and stuff from them, but my friend, he went back to them, and somebody found out it was us, and he bought some weed from them, and they laced it with cyanide. So he died on the porch next to me. So eventually 4 others died, and then the guy Charles, he killed my other friend standing 2 feet from the door and shot him. And he actually somehow got off, they deported him, and he came back and he was saying what he was going to kill me and the rest, so that's when I decided to join the military. Before that, I had left, and I was put into foster care. And by foster care, I went from one foster home to another to where I was put with a white family. That's the first time in my life that I had experienced someone who really cared about me. They spent time with me when it was time for schoolwork. They gave me chores to do, and they really cared. My grades went from D's and F's to A's and B's. But then they decided they put me back with my family. And more troubles, started with more troubles. Friend got killed, decided to join the military. Joined the military at 17. And while I was there, I didn't really like it because I wasn't used to the structure, being told what to do, this and that. But eventually, God made it to where I started excelling, and I went from AIT to airborne school. When I got airborne school, they asked me, didn't want to sign up for special forces. So I decided, well, I'll try it. I actually managed to pass that, stationed at Fort Bragg, and I wasn't even there 2 months. And that's when they bombed Lebanon. And first I said, hey, we're going to hard climate. Here it is October 1st, they popped my mind from Lebanon. So I want to leave, I just want to go AWOL. But somehow I didn't go AWOL, and we ended up flying, and then they told us that we were going to be jumping in, but an hour out we found out that we were just landing in Grenada. And so we get in Grenada. Special Forces teams range from 7 to 13 people. We had an 11-man team. We get there, we taking fire on the C-130. And eventually we got to the position we were going to be in. And 2 days later when we got out orders, my unit actually left me that night. And I woke up the next morning and there was no one there. So I was in total fear. 17, getting ready to turn 18 in Grenada. And finally a colonel saw me running up the actually airstrip where the Cuban Army had built. And took me back to my unit. And it was weird. They didn't miss me, they missed my weapon, because we used to have every morning, you had to meet off the security number. So later on that evening, we had orders to go up into the hills where it was supposed to be the cache of weapons. As we're going up there, we see some of the Cuban armies, they're down in like a bunker, we call them fire. And when we called them fire, the Navy jet, I actually overshot the position to get our position. And that's what was like the second time I've ever seen a person start queuing up. My friend Shaw, he lost both his legs. My friend Keeler, he had just turned 18. He was a medic, fresh out of basic in the AIT. And he tried to save his legs, and every time his heart pumped, the blood just shooting out his arteries. So we stayed there, and then I see a few more people get killed, but it wasn't by the Cuban Army. All the people that were dying in Grenada and getting injured was by friendly fire. They had the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, and Marines on a small island no bigger than Tampa, firing all kinds of weapons, all kinds of cannons. So it affected me. When I got back from Grenada, I started drinking heavily. Went from drinking gin to finally drinking Everclear just to go to sleep, just to stop the nightmares. And eventually it took its toll. I jumped on the colonel one night, beat the colonel, then I beat my roommate and broke his arm. And they sent me to a program. First they sent me to the correctional facility for the military, CCF, where it's like jail. I did 6 months in there. I got out, I was restricted to the barracks. Then they put me in a program for drinking. Put me on this stuff called antabuse. If you drink it, pulls your guts out, it's pain. So eventually, I ended up getting married, but the demons I had weren't gone. One night I was sitting there, and from what she told me, she said, I just snapped, and I took a knife and just threw it in her leg, made her sit there for 6 hours without moving. And she said, I just stared at her. So eventually, we did get divorced. I think because we were young too. And so I finally decided to reclassify. I ended up going to Fort Board to reclassify. I got into military intelligence. Went to Korea, which didn't help. Started drinking more. Ended up marrying a girl named Cheryl Marfries, who was actually Colin Powell's niece. While in Korea, I started drinking heavily and started getting into a lot of fights. I threatened B7, told him I was going to kill him, the way I was going to kill him. And so he was afraid of me, so I was getting ready to be court-martialed. And the day of my court-martial, Colin Powell's niece had actually contacted him, and they gave me 2 days to clear Korea. And all charges, everything against me was dropped. And instead of me leaving in Korea when I was supposed to, I went months before I got caught. And I got caught because I was down at a bar in Korea fighting. MDs caught me, they put me on the plane. When I got to St. Louis, MDs were waiting on me there. But my mind was so bad, and when they thought I got on the plane, stayed in St. Louis for 6 more weeks, came to Tampa, and decided that I needed to get back in the military. So instead of me reporting back to Fort Bragg, I ended up going to Hunter Army Airfield, which assigned me in, and they needed specialty. So I got there, and things were going good. Then I started going to church every now and then. I was just, it was more for show. I didn't really know anything about God because the way I came up. One thing I knew in church was, well, if you don't do this, God is going, you're going to go to hell. But they never let me know anything about Jesus. It was always, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. So met a young lady, we got married, and things were going good. Then I decided I got out of the military. And got out of the military and started working with Lockheed. I was making $27.17 an hour. This was in '93. I was making real good money. And then I didn't need anybody. I didn't need God. I didn't need anything. And I got the big head because I had the money just to do whatever I wanted. I got to where I started drinking again. I started messing with other women. I didn't care about home. Only thing was me, me, me. And I would still go to church and pretend. And then eventually, what happened was I ended up sitting home one day because she left me for someone. And while sitting there in my den, I decided I was going to go ahead and just kill myself. So I had a bottle of gin, 4 bottles of Summer's pills. I was going to pour the pills in the bottle, in the glass, pour the gin. The phone rings. And I answered as my godparents here in Tampa. And my godfather asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm doing fine, Dad. He said, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. He said, well, son, don't lie to me. He said, because God told me you're finna kill yourself. It's not worth it. And I was like, what? He said, God told me you're gonna kill yourself. It's not worth it. And that was the first time that I realized that God was for real. So I ended up I actually turned on the TV and I saw Charles Stanley, and I called his church, and they actually gave me a church that was right down the street, which was a Bible-based church. There I started learning more about God. I ended up getting laid off from Lockheed, so now I can't really manage the mortgage, the 2-car payments, the truck payments, right? And the lost my job. Unemployment, stopped doing it for what out of my way of life, where I was living. And while I was after one of the Bible studies, this lady walks up to me and she said, son, God told me you're gonna get a job today. And I looked at her and I said, okay, yeah, right. So I left and went to one of my uncle's house in Savannah. And he asked me, did I want to drink? And I told him no. So we leave and we're riding around. We go up to this place where we this guy, and this man walks up to me and asks me, he said, you need a job? And I looked at him like, yeah. He said, what can you start? So I started down. He said, I'll come in tomorrow. Right? So I started saying, well, this God thing is real. And I started going to a lot of sermons and other things like met Jesse the Planet, several dollars, Joyce Myles, Kelly Copeland, Phil Hagan, because my pastor, she had went to me for Bible college. And I really started following the word and really got into the church. And then I ended up getting another job. And this lady told me, she said, son, she said, I understand you got no money. She said, but all money is not good. She said, because the job you got, you're going to end up leaving the ministry, and you're going to end up getting a child. I'm looking at her, I'm like, I'm not with no one. And 6 months later, just as she said, I ended up getting a young lady pregnant. And I ended up leaving the church. Then I turned away from God again. Ended up on the streets, went up to Detroit and started working for a cable company. Got up in Detroit. It was doing pretty good. Sometimes every 2 weeks I was averaging $1,700 or less. And things were going good, but once again, the money situation came in. And I don't don't need God anymore. So I ended up ordering another car, and the lady I was seeing, I gave her the money for the insurance and everything, and I asked her to go pay the insurance, get the new sticker for the car. She said she did. I didn't pay attention to it. I drive in the car and I get pulled over. The spare license plate, but I said it's a sticker on the back, and he's like, yeah, but it's stolen. So I go to jail for 3 days. I get out. We have a big argument, and she's like, well, I got the new sticker. I trusted her. I go to work. The same two cops pull me over. And I go right back in front of the judge. He said, Mr. Myles, you don't want to learn. He said, I have a program that we're doing in Mackinac County State Penitentiary. He said, I'm going to send you up there for 3 days, let you see how real criminals live. So I go back to the County Penitentiary. The judge has a heart attack. I ended up doing 6 months in the state penitentiary.
Oh my God.
My paperwork was not signed or nothing, and no one believed that I was there for them for a traffic violation. And one day I was just talking to a guy, a Muslim guy. He told me, like you call another way, you gonna sue. And when I talked to the COs, and 2 hours later, they released me, and they dropped me off in Detroit. It was 16 degrees. All I had on was a t-shirt and some jeans. I tried to go back to the lady house I was cooking, so I ended up living on the streets of Detroit for about, I'd say 3 or 4 months in the winter. And I was actually sleeping in a dumpster that was just pure cardboard. That's all they had was cardboard and plastic. And somehow, the landlord who seen me asked me what was going on. I told him, and he wanted me to come into our apartment where we used to share. I go in there, but we bring the police so I can get my stuff. And while we're in there, the police had been watching the apartment for 6 months while I was locked up because they started selling drugs out of it. So he asked me, can he search it? I was like, yeah, I don't care. And they found about close to $6,000, $7,000 worth of crack. And the lieutenant actually told me that it's best that I leave Detroit. He said, because someone's going to end up killing you behind this, or you're going to have to kill someone. So I actually started hitchhiking from Detroit to here. And while walking down 75, the state trooper pulled me over to see legal to hire hitchhiking mission. I'm thinking I'm going back to jail. So he drops me off at the border of Ohio, and that state trooper comes after me. So he drops me off at the truck stop, and I was like, well, I have no money, I don't know what to do. And so I was sitting there, and this guy looked at me and said, you need a ride? I'm like, yeah. So he drops me off in Kentucky. And while I'm sitting there in the snow, this guy looks at me in the truck and keeps going. And so the place I was standing at, they turned the lights off, so I said, well, I guess I'll go across the street, Lord, this might be where you want me at. I go across, the same guy who looked at me and left, he had turned all the way back around. And asked me where I was going. And I said, well, I'm going to Georgia, I'm going to break it up. He said, well, you sure? I said, well, really, I'm going to Tampa. He said, you know what, that's where I'm going. He said, I just need someone to ride with. So God made it to where I got 2 rides and made it to Tampa. I get to Tampa. I started doing good with God again, but I ended up getting a job with the city, making good money, and once again, the money caused a problem. I didn't need God anymore, I was doing good. Ended up having a problem with the people at the city because of, when I went there, there's people there 10, 15 years, they didn't know how to operate all the equipment that I did. I had more experience in running the backhoe, boom trucks, driving an 18-wheeler and stuff like that, and some of these guys didn't like that. So that became a problem. Started drinking, and I started doing drugs. Lost that, ended up coming to Tampa. Stayed in Tampa for a while. My sister tried to help me out, and she ended up stabbing me in my back. She does a tax thing on me that makes me owe the government $7,000 something. So at this point, I'm feeling sad for myself, and a guy actually told me about Amazing Love Ministry. So I go up there that day, I meet Mr. Jones' barber. They allowed me to, I got something to eat and stuff, and would actually let me sleep on the porch. though we turned our back on it, by Mr. Jim and Miss Barbara, you know, always pursuing me, coming after me, that shows me the love that God has for me, because he used someone to show me his love and how much he really cared for me. And even though I felt that I didn't deserve his love, I didn't deserve his mercy or anything, by Mr. Jim always coming after me, it made me understand how great God's love was. Right? And I know sometimes we want things when we want them and how we want them. But I've learned through these 6 years, really, that I've been with them, that if we wait on God, anything is possible. You know, we're in a generation where we want it now. But if we just ask for patience and understanding, God will do that for us. And, you know, Mr. Jim tells me not to give him God, Ms. Barbara, any praise, but I thank them for being obedient to what God has called them for. Because they have made a difference in a lot of people's lives. Everyone that has been in that ministry has slept on the porch or in that field. God has blessed every single one of us to be off the streets. He has put every single one of us in a place. Me and my wife was sleeping up under the tent, and we really didn't know where we were going to go. And we got up that morning. I plugged my phone in, and it rang, and it was this guy named David Masters. And he asked, he said, "Is this David?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I heard you're homeless." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, come up here Wednesday, and I'll talk to you." We go up there. He said, "Well, I have no vouchers or anything to put y'all in place." He said, "Well, I'll make a call." So he made a call, and it was a friend of ours named Stacy, who actually used to be homeless. God delivered her, put her in her own place, and got her a job. And she's like, "I know David from Amazing Love Ministry." And I said, "Yes, Stacy, this week." And she said, "Well, you come up here Friday." She said, "A person just lost their voucher today." And she said, "It's meant for you." So, you know, I mean, I do stumble sometimes, and I know I'm not perfect. I'm always being perfect. But I thank God for being patient with me. And, you know, giving me the understanding that he knows that I'm going to fail, and that I know that as long as we continue, me and my wife continue to pray and give God his time, and keep the one thing I got to say, you got to continue to be prayerful. Because if you let this devil get in your mind, that's the worst thing you can do. So we have a routine. Sometimes she's frown, we get up, we got the scripture, we listen to someone, we read, we pray. Even though some days I don't want to, but I'm going to be continuously doing that. And so, all I'm asking that, no matter what your situation is, God can bring you through it.
Amen.
And there's people around this ministry. I mean, everyone who's here volunteering, they have a love for you. They're trying to help you. Right? Just by them being here, it shows God's love for everybody. I don't care if you're in the streets or at home, God loves you all. And if he can do it for me for a lot of things that I've done, and some I have not been told, he can do it for anybody else. Thank you.
That's right.